and welcome back once more, everyone. This is Atama's Review Corner, Season 2, Episode 3. This review is made possible thanks to the Xbox 360 and its Avatar Connect Fun Labs app. I am your digital host, Atama Darkening, and today I will be reviewing Alan Wake for the Xbox 360. Grab a pen and paper, and let's write right into the review. The story of the game is the player controls Alan Wake, a best-selling thriller writer who keeps having bad dreams and has had writer's block for roughly 2 years. He and his wife then decide to travel to a town known as Bright Falls for a vacation to re-spark his writing talents. However, when his wife is kidnapped and he wakes up from a blackout, it is up to the player to find out what happened and save him and his wife from what Alan calls the Dark Presence. This is the first of the series, and by the sounds of it, not being the last, with a supposed sequel in the works. The game is done by the company Remedy, who is famous for the Max Payne series. Alan himself is not your typical hero. Instead, he is just a writer thrusted into a world unknown to him and trying to survive. The game spans over 6 episodes, making it feel like a soap opera or a miniseries. With how the game works, the beginning and end of each episode, as well, ends with a cliffhanger and begins with a recap of the events of the previous episode, always making me feel like I wanted more throughout the game. Alan talks to himself in narration, making comments that helps to progress the story or add amusement to how he reacts to what is going on around him. Throughout the game, Alan will come across pages to his manuscript that he supposedly wrote after blacking out and acts as both collectibles and giving away future events without ruining the moment later, as it fills the gamer in on why and or how the events will unfold, waiting for the moment and how it's all going to go down. As players progress through the game, they may notice that they will follow a sort of linear path, never leading too far from the path, but just enough to let the player feel as though they may have more freedom in exploring this area. Also, on a side note, players will expect to see a lot of product placement placed conveniently throughout the lay of the story, and will be impossible to escape from as the player explores their way. The environment around Wake is just amazing. The sense of all the shows, radios, and knickknacks you find around the town of Bright Falls. The town itself feels like it is a real place, as all of Bright Falls' buildings, mountains, and even roads give a sense of realistic detail, letting the player feel as though the town and the characters could actually exist. The player will want to get to know these characters and care what happens to them, especially as the game takes the time to teach the players a bit of each character's history, secrets, and life in general. And, in my opinion, the graphics themselves are just as much a main character that always keeps you guessing as you travel within it. I recommend doing everything possible while a visitor of this great town. Without all of the sounds emitting around and inside it, and sounding almost too like actual sounds in life, the game could not have the tension it holds within its environment. There's a whole lot of variety to do in this game, from having conversations to driving a car, or just uncovering most of the secrets of the town, either from the townsfolk or using a flashlight. It may give a nice exploration feeling and let the player feel like they actually moved to a new place and want to check everything available to entertain themselves, just as they would in an actual new town. Barry, his manager, is one of the great and more likable character counterparts to Alan, and goes from being annoying to annoying in a cool way, or at least it feels like it to me. Don't get me wrong, though. Each time a character is thrown into Wake's path, they bring their own personality and likability. Even though a lot of the game does involve story and running, surprisingly enough, the combat is still satisfying, even if Wake's combat arsenal may be slim. It rises the tension that much more. And with the game's main focus being on, or around the dark and the dark presence, who can assume control over anyone and anything once it has been in the darkness, it can be the player's next enemy. Not to mention that before the player can take the person or object down, Wake must use the light sources around him, or on him, to extinguish the darkness surrounding a person before a weapon will work. However, when the light hits an object controlled by the dark presence, it will destroy the inanimate object. Usually there are two parts to each episode, a day and night. But where this game excels, in my opinion, is in the night. With the landscapes now changed by darkness all around, the player will never know where or what may pop out. And most of the time, Wake's only defense being a flashlight flare or quick reflexes to dodge and escape for your life in the numbers beginning to catch up to the player. One of the only complaints with the game is the camera, which can be a player's own worst enemy as well when groups of enemies start to pop up and they try to escape from them, only to sometimes fall right off the cliff to their death. The other complaint being one of the more annoying things to me, which is the people who are corrupted by the darkness, or as Alan calls them, the Taken, which can also get away with melee items like axes or knives, which they can come at you from seemingly out of nowhere and throw the items, leaving you in the dark as it hits the player. Given that, along with the infinite spawn of the enemies being able to come at you from any angle at any time, the players has a sense of always keeping themselves guarded. There's also the need to want to explore the landscape around, which can slightly get frustrating when the player has to choose between exploring and running to the next checkpoint to save them from ending up dead, because the enemies sometimes never stop coming from the darkness. If the player wishes to explore, they may just be wiser to play on an easy setting, though with the feeling of always being watched still looms. Music is a big factor as well in this game. All very great, especially two certain songs, which I will mention as they are two of my favorites and is easy to find on YouTube. They are War by Poets of the Fallen and The Old Gods of Asgard, also by the Poets of the Fallen, though that second one may only be attributed to the fact of the awesome but deadly fight scene that happens halfway through the game that involves Wake and the player to fend off the Taken on a rock stage with lights and light-based things going off all around. However, the music in general is superb, so much so I picked up the soundtrack, which normally I only do if I love the music in the game. Granted, not everyone may like it, but it still can be decent, or at least better than some games with the same reused music. The fact that the game actually gets some licensed music makes for an interesting game to see what will be played next. The voice acting is also a masterfully done. The environment and the music gives the perfect trifecta of an even more of a good TV show or game, where every bit of it can pull the player in with no real big problems to complicate the realism. To summarize, and to add, some of the best features are great gameplay, compelling characters, location, and events unfolding throughout the game, which may keep the player on the edge of their seat till the end, working as a suspense game, just like they wanted from Remedy. And then some of the bad things about the game are the left open ending saved for the future DLC, and then even after the DLC is played, the hopefully inevitable sequel still left open with many questions unanswered. The game may become repetitive with a lack of different enemies, and lastly, replaying the game fully except for the achievements or wanting to play a certain chapter over again the player may decide to never touch the game once they have finished it. Lastly, for those who like achievements or only play the game for achievements, most of them are either story-based, weapon-based, such as so many kills or multiple kills at once, and then the collectibles. This, in the end, may make some people, especially those who dislike such achievements that involve collectibles, and can even start to push them away from the game. It has 298 collectibles, and the player must collect at least 291 of them, I believe, in order to unlock all the collectible-based achievements. Other than the collectibles, they are not too hard to acquire most of the rest of them. The hardest achievement the player may run into is Collector's Edition. It basically entails the player to completely collect the manuscript pages, but to do so, they must play the game twice. And while playing the second time, it must be in nightmare mode, surviving as they pick them up. There are no online achievements. On a scale of how difficult it is to acquire all the achievements from 1 to 10, I would give this game a 6. For easy story and weapon-based achievements, but for the possibility of burning a player out with so many collectibles. Even if some of them are fun to interact with. Also, to note, if the player skips all the achievements and only goes through the story, then the game may only take up to 10 hours. And at that point, it may be better as a rental. So, in conclusion, the game's story is great and is well-written thriller game that I initially thought would be a little less than what it actually turned out to be. But it can leave a player unsatisfied or feel as though it is incomplete, as Remedy left out some things within the story that can only be acquired with playing on nightmare difficulty, for those last few achievements as well. And at the end of the day, after all the questions have been answered, with the manuscripts and DLC, it can still make the gamer wanting more within the world of Alan Wake. With all the cliffhangers at the end, and only the sequel can fill the player's appetite. But all in all, though, the game can be great entertainment, has a beautiful environment and visuals, which makes everything in the world feel alive for the most part. The final score for Alan Wake is a 9 out of 10. So, until next time, come back to Adam's Review Corner, Season 2, Episode 4, for a rant about glitched or unattainable achievements or trophies. And remember, keep gaming and reaching for those achievements in games.